This is CJSW's Municipal election coverage, your audio guide to Calgary's 2025 election. This series gives you interviews with candidates running for office, exploring the people, policies, and issues that will shape Calgary's future. We're broadcasting from CJSW 90.9 FM, located at the University of Calgary, on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. Before we begin, we would like to remind listeners that the views expressed in this podcast are those of the candidates and the interview subjects, and not those of CJSW or its staff. Known for its riverfront parks and growing population of students and professionals, today is about Ward 7. Ward 7 stretches across the north-central area of Calgary, bridging northwest and northeast quadrants. From downtown's core to hillside streets, Ward 7 is home to some of the city's oldest neighbourhoods and most engaged communities. Issues of densification, housing affordability, transit access, and social supports are front of mind in Ward 7. The communities included in Ward 7 are Banff Trail, Capitol Hill, Chinatown, Crescent Heights, Downtown Commercial Core, Downtown East Village, Downtown West End, Eau Claire, Hillhurst, Hounsfield Heights, Briar Hill, Montgomery, Mount Pleasant, Parkdale, Point Mckay, Rosedale, St. Andrews Heights, Sunnyside, Tuxedo Park, University District, University Heights, University of Calgary, and West Hillhurst. We went directly to citizens of Ward 7 to ask what they're feeling this election season.
Well, right now they've torn down the Eau Claire Mall next to my building, and I understand it will be beautiful, but there's been a lot of heavy equipment, and it's loud, and it's messy, and so improvement takes time. We have to be patient. It is an urban area as opposed to the sticks. So you deal with it, and I look forward to it being finished. And we're doing things in Calgary that the rest of the country doesn't want to do. We're taking care of each other. We're continuing with green space. We're putting new housing in for people, doing the reclamation from offices to accommodation. And I think that's very important for this city and for Canada. Just happy Pride, my friends. That's right.
Proximity to the river, proximity to downtown, accessibility of the bike paths, proximity to Kensington, ease of access to Highway 1 when you want to get out of the city. You know, honestly, I think that we could find some way of, and this sounds kind of bad, but making it such that there aren't a bunch of tent cities lining the river. I very much understand why people gravitate there, but if you're there's just shopping carts strewn on the south side of the river because I don't think police ever go back there, and people go there to hang out and presumably do drugs and find a warm place to sleep where they won't be bothered, and that's very understandable as well. Just displacing them that isn't a great solution. It's just kind of moving the problem elsewhere so that we in our nice communities don't have to see it.
Now that we've heard what's on the minds of some Ward 7 residents, let's turn to the people hoping to represent them. We reached out to nominated candidates and trustees running in the 2025 general election to participate in this podcast. The following interviews feature only those candidates who responded and were available to participate within our production timeline. To ensure consistency, we selected about 1 minute of each candidate's response to include in this episode. The audio is presented unedited, and we've aimed to fairly represent each participant's message and voice. We remain committed to providing space for all voices and encourage voters to learn more about every candidate by visiting electionscalgary.ca. Since his election in 2021, Terry Wong has represented Ward 7 at City Hall. He is seeking re-election in the fall as a founding member of the community's first party, but there are a few other hopefuls with their hat in the ring as well. It's time to hear from those candidates themselves. We asked each of them the same set of questions to help you compare their priorities, values, and vision for Ward 7. On social services. What do you believe is the city's role in supporting vulnerable Calgarians through social services such as mental health support and harm reduction? Running with the Calgary Party, we have Heather Mckay.
Social service supports, I have to conclude, are something that the city must provide because we feel the impacts when we don't. So it's incumbent upon the City of Calgary to be working with the province, to be working with our federal partners, to find funding models to help support harm reduction, mental health supports. We all know that we're in a housing crisis. If we are not housing individuals, we cannot help them with their mental health, with their drug addiction issues. So these things are all intertwined. To try to separate municipal government from that would cost us all more money in the end.
Representing Communities First, Terry Wong.
Yeah, when it comes to social services of our vulnerable population, people will often say it's a federal and provincial responsibility, more provincial. But the reality is that the province isn't stepping up, so the city needs to step up a little more. We're doing that right now through funding partnerships to different agencies, associations, as well as supporting them through infrastructure. Having said that, though, is that enough? No, we need to do more than that, and we need to be able to work in a multidisciplinary sort of practice together with the Alberta Health Services, as well as our protective services, fire, police, EMS, and our bylaw services in a coordinated manner. Some of that has started, but not enough. And I think we need to be more compassionate, recognizing that the vulnerable population needs our support.
Running with the Better Calgary Party, Anthony Eskew.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to make sure that we have programs set in place to support people that need help, right? That are vulnerable and that look for us for that type of support, right? It is our responsibility to make sure that we have the budget in place for that. That's one of the main things that we focus on when it comes to combating issues like homelessness, is to make sure that we have treatments for PTSD, for trauma, for rehabilitation, and all measures of social needs and help. And we want to make sure that we have that locked in, because that's quite frankly our responsibility to make sure we have a budget for that. So 100%, it's vital, it's important, and it's our responsibility as City Council to make sure that we have the resources people need to get help.
Running as an independent, Mike Atkinson.
Obviously in Calgary, we are dealing with a situation that we're not just seeing here in Calgary, we're seeing it all over the world, right? There are addiction problems, homelessness is rampant all over the world. This isn't just a Calgary thing. But we used to at least sort of feign the idea that we were going to do something about it, right? We had this 10-year plan to end homelessness that we launched at almost the exact same time as Medicine Hat launched theirs. In Calgary, though, we kind of have dropped the whole idea, and we've sort of thrown our hands up and said that this is too complex. We need to lean into the services that have been starting to develop, like the Alpha House, the Dope Team, the Bear Clan, and make sure that we bring these in to support these critical services to mental health, to harm reduction in our community, to providing safety on our streets, and to changing the overall structures for those who are most vulnerable and most at risk in our society. Thank you.
On affordable housing, what specific policies or initiatives would you support to improve housing affordability and accessibility in Calgary? From Heather Mckay.
Yeah, housing. We all know that Calgary is in a housing crisis right now. And to be honest, I think that we've done a big disservice by only talking about housing in terms of affordable housing. But what I have learned is that there is a housing continuum that includes non-market affordable housing, market affordable housing, and then moving up the continuum, as prices go up, the continuum continues. So there's a number of different things that the city has to do in order to ensure that we're meeting the housing needs of citizens. Let's talk about affordable housing. I think that we're doing a pretty good job with our affordable housing starts. We've hit 40% of our targets for this year. We have lots of work to do in the short time remaining. Something that the City of Calgary can be doing is that when we sell a parcel of land to a not-for-profit, we should be selling that parcel already rezoned so that the not-for-profit does not have to go through that process.
From Terry Wong.
When it comes to affordable housing, that's probably one of the largest topics we've dealt with in the council the last 4 years, particularly the notion of blanket rezoning. And I want people to understand that blanket rezoning is only one element of solving the housing problem. But I'll start by saying, number one, that Calgary is a community of 148 odd years, and we have a lot of history and heritage in our communities, and we need to ensure that we don't homogenize all of our communities. Having said that, though, we need to be able to find housing density in appropriate ways. And is that a blanket approach? Not necessarily. More appropriately, we need to take a look at our communities, our multi-communities and local area planning, and have a direct input from both industry as well as residents, as well as community associations and city planners to create the right environment so they can have housing in the right places. Should we have more multi-residential? Yes, we should. But people don't always want to live in an apartment blocks. They do want to live in single-family homes. Row houses and townhouses are appropriate. But again, we need to be contextually sensitive and not destroy communities in doing that.
From Anthony Askew.
I'd say a lot of that is just being transparent with the building plans to the communities that we present them on, right? I am against blanket rezoning. I am completely against it just because I think City Hall or city councilors take advantage of communities and they don't really get to hear their concerns when it comes to new housing developments and projects that go inside their communities, and they just build them so their developers can get a greenlit project. And I think if we skip that step where we talk to the communities and hear what their concerns are, then we're not doing them any favors. We need to be open and transparent. And if we are able to be open and transparent to those communities, then we can come up with better, more affordable and equitable housing projects for them. So we're not nickel and diming people and ripping them off.
From Mike Atkinson.
Housing affordability has become a serious issue in this city. I've been speaking with a number of individuals at the doors, and people are honestly, I'm hearing some of the saddest stories about people being 2 months behind on rent, worried that they're going to be evicted any moment. Housing is a human right. We need to make sure that people have a roof over their heads. To do that, we at City Council need to make sure that there is obviously enough housing being built. We need to make sure that there is access to housing at various levels of affordability. And that includes, I think, really focusing back again on non-market housing. We haven't been building things like housing co-ops and these other just sort of forms of non-market housing to support low-income individuals in our city for over 50 years. We need to bring this kind of housing product back into the overall market, and it will help not just those folks who access those rentals, but also the folks that are accessing rentals in just the market space as well. Thank you.
On transportation, what is your vision for improving traffic flow and public transit in your ward and across the city? From Heather Mckay.
I think that there was a really solid proposal that came forward by some transit advocates for putting a bus priority lane up Center Street during rush hour. It would be a really great way for there to be better free flow of transit buses. It would make it more efficient. And hopefully it would make transit appear more attractive for users. So I think that, and it would only have to be something that we do during rush hour. It wouldn't have to be all day. So I think that there's some creative thinking that we need to bring to the transit solutions that we're experiencing. I will tell you that in Ward 7, I really do think that we need a traffic study. I have been told that there has been a disconnect created between mobility and redevelopment or the development industry, and we no longer look at those things from a city lens as being intertwined.
From Terry Wong.
So in Ward 7, we're probably a little more fortunate and blessed because we are the inner city ward, and with the access to the LRT stations, and both going the red, blue lines and eventually the green line. On top of that, we have a BRT system that runs through here and networks all radiuses outside the downtown core. However, having said that, within the Ward 7 and outside, say, the established area communities, people will often say if you live in Renfrew, it's faster to walk downtown than take a bus network around. Or other people will say that the frequency and the timing of the service is not aligned with where people go. Or thirdly, getting to a destination, for example, why is it that if you want to go to the MMP Sports Center, that you have to take a bus, park at McLeod Trail, walk, literally half a kilometer there? Why don't we have buses going to the front door of MMP or the shopping centers? And most U.S. cities do exactly that.
From Anthony Askew.
So we have to just be responsible with where we decide to, do certain developments, right? Whether it's, bike lanes here. And I am in favor of anyone that wants to use a bike over a car, but we have to be responsible of where we put those bike lanes so they're not, congesting large parts of traffic and holding everyone back. Because, statistically right now, there's just not enough people using a lot of the bike lanes that the city has constructed. So hundreds use them, but thousands are affected. And I'm not anti-bike lane. I just want to make sure that if we're, building something, that we're building it correctly, responsibly, and that people are using it effectively as well too, and that we are being responsible with our construction, because that's important. We can't just build stuff and expect things to work out. We have to be, proper planning is necessary, and we have to be responsible for that.
From Mike Atkinson.
How we get around in the city is one of the most critical things that the city government takes care of, in my opinion. This obviously, I've been a public transit advocate for many years, trying to work on things like the low-income transit pass, fare-free transit for youth 12 and under. Getting more people to ride transit is good for the city, it's good for people, it's good for us living closer together. It answers so many problems throughout the whole scale. But that requires reliable, quality, and affordable public transportation. This means investing in things like the infrastructure, like the Green Line. This makes sure we need to take care of the many train stations all throughout Ward 7 and across the city. And we need to make sure that even bus services and the supporting infrastructure in and around this are well maintained, and we build up the reliability and the frequency so that no matter where you want to go, there is a reliable route that gets you there, frequently accessible and affordable for families living in the city.
Thank you.
On public safety, how would you balance community safety with calls for accountability and reform in our police, fire, and emergency services? From Heather Mckay.
Well, when we talk about public safety, specific to Ward 7, I'm going to talk about traffic impacts. It's the number one thing I hear about when I'm knocking on doors, whether I'm in West Hillhurst, in Sunnyside, in Mount Pleasant. People are exhausted by the volumes of traffic. People are running red lights because they're frustrated. They're trying to cut through community because they're trying to get somewhere faster than the road grid is allowing them to proceed. I think that we need more enforcement from police. Kensington Road and 14th Street is a really great example of just a harrowing intersection that I've had to navigate quite a bit in the last year. The number of people that are running red lights, not watching for pedestrians, you really have to have your wits about you at that particular intersection. So I think that there's some very low-hanging fruit for us to address.
From Terry Wong.
Yeah, when you talk about public safety and more from a public security perspective, these are one things that only governments can do. But having said that, they also have to be compassionate and understanding of our constituents and community and the diversity of our community. When we talk about that, we don't particularly have a problem with fire. Fire is obviously there to provide prevention and fire suppression services. However, when it comes to policing, there's a lot of different dimensions of policing, and it doesn't help that we see policing around the world and in North America and the conflicts associated with that and the differences of opinion. What we've been trying to do, especially myself being on the Calgary Police Commission, is ensure that we recognize both the compassion as well as the enforcement aspect of policing, and making sure that our current officers and new recruits are properly trained with that understanding and compassion. So having said that, though, providing them guns and cars is only one element. We need to be sure that our Calgary Police Services membership are always aware and trained on compassionate care. And again, that's one of the things I'm pushing through the Calgary Police Commission.
From Anthony Askew.
Our job in City Council, and this might not be the most glamorous or sexy answer that any politician can give. And by the way, I hate to describe myself as a politician. I'm just more of a concerned citizen. But I think the honest answer is, look, it's not our job in City Hall to tell the police how to do their job. It is our job to make sure they have the resources, the funding, the proper training to do their job effectively and responsibly for the citizens of Calgary. It is not our job to implement policies for the police to follow. It is our job to make sure that they have the proper training, the proper resources, and the proper support so they can do their job effectively. And of course, if incidents happen, then we do need to take a look at that and make sure that accountability is upheld. And it is important that trust is there with the local police force and in our communities, because without trust, there's nothing.
From Mike Atkinson.
Community safety is a top priority in Ward 7. Obviously, that includes the downtown, which is a huge sort of concern, an ongoing concern for all Calgarians across the city. But this also includes things like transit and just the inner city communities, which everyone wants to be able to safely move around and have a great experience in our city. But our emergency services are being tasked with things that they were not trained and set up to deal with. Mental health supports, addiction supports, these are not things that someone who has been trained as a police officer or as a firefighter is necessarily equipped to deal with. Even EMS. EMS shows up and they're there to deal with physical harm. We need a new kind of emergency response in Calgary, and we're seeing it being provided by teams like the DOPE team, like Alpha House, where they're coming in and they're providing these kinds of services, social services supports, but we have not formalized that and brought it into our emergency response systems. That's the next step that we need.
On environment. How would you approach environmental sustainability in Calgary, particularly around land development, waste management, and water conservation? From Heather Mckay.
I am running as part of a party. It's called the Calgary Party, and we have proposed a solution that would see a water utility established that would be similar to NMAX. So we would have a body that is empowered to be singularly focused on the quality of water, the water infrastructure that our city has, and they would also have opportunities to borrow or even to create a deficit situation for those repairs, which is not something that is an option for the city right now. So they do that in Edmonton. Edmonton only sees 5% of the water leak from their pipes. So it's a really significant difference.
From Terry Wong.
Sure, thank you for that one. I think there's many different facets when talking about environment. Obviously, we're talking about the land, the water, our airways. We're also talking about the vegetation, the ecology we've got, and there's many different facets associated with that. I've always been a supporter of that, and particularly when you talk about land development as an example. One will say that we should be building inner city and building up as opposed to building out and sprawl. There's certainly a lot of merit associated with that, but you'll still see people though wanting to live in places where they frequent, whether it be the work, the education centers, and recreation amenities. So we need to balance where people want to be with the environment and ecology. Having said that, though, when we talk about environment and ecology, we have to be very sensitive to, if I use the term site coverage. If you take, so many hectares of land and say, there's 10% is reserved for green space and another 30% is reserved for roadways and that, we're effectively taking 40% away from developers for land development.
From Anthony Askew.
Our city is going to grow. Right, year after year, we're going to get more people, and it's always going to be a balancing act of preserving as much of our beautiful nature as possible, and then obviously building more development to grow our city, right, with the needs of the people there. It's always going to be a balancing act, and we have to be responsible in how we view any project that is proposed to us for new housing, new developments, and stuff like that. And when it comes to water preservation, like I'll always say this: if you're watering your gardens, your parks, your plants, or trees, that is the best way to use water. There was nothing wasteful about doing that. If you remember when Calgary first started, there was virtually no trees. We planted those because we don't get enough natural rain and from the weather to support that. So, doing that for our trees is also very vital. I don't think that's wasteful.
From Mike Atkinson.
In Calgary, we've been sprawling for many, many years, and it's created a very unsustainable city in many different ways. Just running city services as far out as we have with the lack of density, especially in communities built in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, has really created an unsustainable city. But we have to take that as an opportunity. We have to look at this from a Calgary lens and sort of say, oh, we have a chance here to actually fix some of the mistakes of the past and bring some more density into these communities built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. We've got train lines coming through. We need to best use our public transit systems, these kinds of resources that make us live more sustainable lives in the city. If we can make better use of them by bringing density in, especially in these communities in the outskirts of the inner city, we can make a much more sustainable city, both for ourselves and for the planet as a whole.
On education. While education is largely a provincial responsibility, how do you see the city collaborating with school boards to support accessible and quality education in your ward? From Heather Mckay.
Well, I think that the way that our city needs to support education has to be through land management and ensuring that we have land availability for school boards, which still remains tricky because new schools are never built without provincial funding. So it's part of the complexity of the system that we have. I don't know how else that we can intervene. I mean, we can provide opportunities through recreation facilities. Could be another way. When I think specifically of where the greatest need is, it's probably in the Northeast, where we have a lot of English as a second language. But I can tell you that in conversations that I have with Bow Valley College, that they've actually just lost some really important federal funding that funds some of their English as a second language programs. And so, what role can a counselor play in that? Being an advocate, right? I think that will be an important role.
From Terry Wong.
You're right. Education is a responsibility of the province, but where the crossover is, the lands available for building schools, and the ability to take schools that are, retired and be able to transform those buildings into other purposes and that. So we have a joint utility committee with the Catholic school boards and the public school boards to be able to identify where the growth patterns are and start advocating the allocation of land and greenfield spaces for be able to doing these schools, and then of course working with the province, ensuring our municipal services are aligned with that. On the flip side of the equation, where we get schools that are not being served, Tuxedo School is an example.
From Anthony Askew.
So this one's tough for me because I have to separate my personal ideology and what I believe from what my responsibilities are and what my duties are as a member of city council, right? Because our job is to make sure that the schools have a proper budget and funding so they can, do their curriculum and they can do their programs effectively for our kids, right? My personal views, I would love for schools to be more in partnership with parents when it comes to teaching their kids, certain subjects and topics, and I want parents more involved with that. But that's not my duty as a member of city council to regulate that. My duty is to make sure they have the proper budget so they can teach their kids properly in accordance to their curriculum.
From Mike Atkinson.
While what happens in schools is obviously mostly with the provincial government, students have to get to school and back home from school safely. And that is largely on the city government to take care of. This is the pedestrian infrastructure. This is about walkability, bikeability to school, making sure that kids can get there, preferably on their own. They shouldn't necessarily have to have a parent going with them. And the only way that we can actually make that happen is by making sure that the infrastructure is there to support kids getting to school safely. So this is investment in pedestrian infrastructure. This is investment in biking infrastructure. I also think that we need to be exploring fare-free transit. I was an advocate for raising the fare-free transit age to 12 and under, and I think it actually should go to 18 and under. That's part of my platform. All students should be able to get to school easily, cheaply, and it should just be a great experience to kick off your day and go and get your learning done at your local school.
On arts and culture. How will you support local arts and culture as a part of Calgary's identity? From Heather Mckay.
I have always been somebody who has supported theater, dance, those kinds of more formal arts. I'm a big proponent for the Bump Festival, the Bump Mural program. I was supportive in my role as the Director of Strategic Communications for the Calgary Downtown Association. I was supportive of a young organization downtown called Alcove, which was using a space that had been left vacant for a long period of time, and they were activating it and continue to activate it with different arts activities. So I think that there's a number of different ways that we can be supporting arts and culture. Some of them are formal, some of them are informal. They bring vitality to our community. I think that we need more of them. We need more opportunities for that vitality to happen. I think the Beltline has been a really great example of the vitality that can develop when we embrace that arts culture, and I'd love to see that pour over more into other parts of the city.
From Terry Wong.
Very good question. For the last 2 years, I've been on the board of directors for Calgary Arts Development, and the purpose of doing that is to ensure not only that our performing arts and our, professional arts performance programs are supported and they have venues, but it's also about community development, ensuring that community artists, local artists have a place to work, to do the creations, and ultimately to showcase themselves. And that's what the Calgary Arts Development group is really all about. The other thing I'll say is that as it relates to myself personally through council, I've been able to inject additional dollars to what we call micro grants, cultural grants, to allow our different cultural groups, our local artists to flourish. You see a lot of murals, for example, in the downtown core. A lot of that's been funded by the additional grant monies that they've been put forward in council the last couple of years. Last year, particularly, I was able to get $2 million of additional grant money after we passed the budget, additional $2 million dedicated to activating downtown through arts and culture and events.
From Anthony Askew.
Arts and culture is absolutely vital to any civilization. Without arts and culture, there's just no personality to that city. There's just this missing void without it. So it's very important to me that local artists and the culture they represent gets supported here. But I want to make sure that they're supported properly, and that they're supported responsibly, and that we are not overspending on things that would be seen as extracurricular versus things that are more important to the city and integral, like infrastructure, for example, like water mains, responsible things that we have to keep an eye out. So I want to focus on. I think we can achieve both, to be honest. I think we can support arts and infrastructure. We just have to be responsible with, how we do that.
From Mike Atkinson.
Connecting with Calgary's vibrant arts and culture scene is what convinced me that Calgary is my forever city. It was my experiences as a young individual going to all ages shows. It was coming in, volunteering here at CJSW. It was getting to know the local bands and the quality of amazing artists in this city that made me realize that there is something special about what's happening in this city. And arts and culture is a huge, huge point of entrepreneurship. It's a way for people to express themselves. It's mental health support. It's things throughout. It's what makes Calgary a great place to live. And so making sure that we are there to provide obviously funding to support it, but also I think a big part of it is also just showing up, encouraging and focusing our attention, especially on those local artists that are doing great things every day to make our city a more vibrant and special place to live. That is the role of City Council. Shine a light on the amazing things we have.
On community. In what ways do you try to give back to your community? From Heather Mckay.
So I think that giving back to community can take shape lots of different ways. There's formal channels that I've been on boards of directors. I was on the board of the YMCA for a time. I worked for or was involved with the board of our ski club. I was the president, a treasurer, a number of different roles. But sometimes giving back to community is really small things too. It's being kind when you see people on street. It's saying hello. I love dog parks. They're my favorite place on earth. Or saying hello to somebody else that's walking their dog down the street. It's a really wonderful opportunity to interact with people. You don't know anything about each other than you're both out trying to get some fresh air, give your dog some exercise, and it puts down everybody's guard. And I think that we need more of those vicarious interactions with people in community to help build community. I find it's really missing right now.
From Terry Wong.
You know, I'm going to be so proud, if I can use the word. Of the 14 councillors and the mayor, I think I hit more community engagements than anybody else. In other words, for me, being a councillor, it's been a 7-day job. We do that evenings, of course, in different sort of community association AGMs, weekends, a variety of community events, festivals and that. I've got 21 communities compared to somebody who's only got 8 communities. And so for me, it's a pleasure, but also a challenge to get around to seeing everybody. The other thing about communities is that we also have a large cultural community in Ward 7. Obviously, Chinatown is one of those, but we also have a lot of cultural groups that come down to celebrate whether it be in the new Eau Claire Plaza, Lot 6, Cowboys, and that sort of thing. And we try to get out to a lot of the cultural events and bring greetings on behalf of council, but also recognizing knowledge that Calgary is a diverse city of a lot of newcomers, and the ethnocultural group is excessively important.
From Anthony Askew.
So I'm a local business owner, right? I have a cleaning company, and I am also the vice president of the PGIB, which is the Progressive Group of Independent Business. And I talk to contractors and business owners every single day. They tell me their concerns, and I want to do everything I can to support them and their business, because starting a business is scary. It's really difficult. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and it's a big investment. And I want people, entrepreneurs and business owners, to know that if you invest in this city, I want to go out of my way to make sure that the city returns that favor and invest in you guys. So I would like to look at programs where we can help support, whether it's through promotion, financially, whatever the case may be, young entrepreneurs and business owners that are in need of help, because that would be my way of giving back to the community.
From Mike Atkinson.
Volunteerism has been a big part of my connection to this city. It has been a big way in which I feel that I have been able to support, but also gain a lot back for myself and being connected to this place. That is volunteering with my local community association in Banff Trail in Ward 7. That is volunteering with city communities and committees and boards with things like the Established Areas Growth and Change Strategy Finance Committee. It's a mouthful. That is also things like volunteering with places like CGSW, art supporting organizations like Sled Island and Music Calgary. There's so many ways in which you as a person can get involved in this city if you're willing to put some muscle in. And I've always found that when you put in, you get so much back. I've also worked in the public sector for the last 5 years. I worked at the Calgary Public Library, and I believe that public service is actually one of the best things that you can do with your time, whether that's the time you're getting paid for or the time that you have on the side.
We note that Indigenous groups have their own bodies of governance, but as we are on shared land, we dedicated a question to decolonization. What is your understanding of Calgary's responsibilities under the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action? From Heather Mckay.
Reconciliation goals through the White Goose Flying Report. We know that there are calls to action that have not been addressed, primarily because we like to cut the budget on all things city building, and that's often one of the first things to go. I think that the city has done I think that the city is doing a pretty good job trying to move forward on that. We need to continue to consult with our neighbors, with our Indigenous elders. I've had the opportunity to meet with many elders in the last 3 years. It's always inspirational. I'm always struck that our Indigenous communities really want to move forward. They are not spending a lot of time looking backwards. They want to move forward productively, respectfully, and hand in hand. And I think that we have a responsibility to do that work with them. And it's something that I look forward to doing.
From Terry Wong.
Yeah, I think, we need to go back, and this goes back, more than this council term, back to the White Goose Flying Report, and recognizing that there have been injustices, long before even the settlers, put Calgary down. It goes back into, the early 1800s, and, what we saw in central Canada and permeated from there across. Recognition that the suppression, oppression of the Indigenous is something that we need to recognize moving forward. We need to support the Indigenous community, our First Nations, in getting their foot back on the ground level with everybody else, and we've been doing that quite successfully, I believe, at the City of Calgary. Can we do more? Certainly we can. The question then becomes, are we feeding through social support funding programs, feeding that, or doing going more, and that's helping, a hands-up approach, and helping them even go beyond what's obvious to them, and helping them step up to be that nation that they truly want to be.
From Anthony Askew.
This is a tough one. I think this should be tough for most people if we're being honest about it, because number one, I understand why people hold this very, dear to them, and I get that. I look at it two ways, as pragmatically as I can. Number one, it's not a municipal thing in terms of our purview as city council, but I also know it's important to a lot of people. I will say this: I would love to treat, our people, our Indigenous people as equals, as partners, and work with them, right? Not separate them, and not. The way I would phrase this is, it's hard to go back in history and rewrite a lot of the wrongs that this country has done. And I think the best way to move forward is together, as one, and just working together as equal partners.
From Mike Atkinson.
After the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action came out many years ago, Calgary commissioned the White Goose Flying Report, and this is a way to localize those broader calls to action for what needs to happen at the city. Now, this is a whole host of recommendations, both for the City of Calgary and the organization itself, its partner organizations that it works with within the city, and just sort of broader ways in which we as a city need to work on our reconciliation efforts with Indigenous communities and nations that we are very much a part of. So the next step in this, for me specifically, I think that we really need to focus on certain key elements within that report. The biggest one is housing. We have an unhoused population of Indigenous people living in our urban environment that is way out of proportion with the number of Indigenous individuals who are living in our city. And we really need to rectify that. It is not right that so many Indigenous people are living on our streets and suffering all of the ailments that come along with that. Providing safe housing for Indigenous people has to be the next focus point.
Finally, we gave each candidate a moment to share any closing remarks. From Heather Mckay.
Well, thanks very much for the opportunity to come in and chat with you today. I will say that I think that Ward 7 has been missing an advocate for the last 4 years. We have not had an advocate for reinvestment in our ward. Ward 7 is the jewel of our city system. It is where people come to learn, to celebrate, to enjoy the arts. We have so many major facilities in our ward. And we also have downtown, and we have not had a council or a councillor in Ward 7 who has been really invested in ensuring that we have a healthy downtown and healthy communities. I have a proven track record of being collaborative, of being forward-looking, and I want to work with residents to ensure that Ward 7 is the best place that it can be.
From Terry Wong.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to say first off is being the councillor for Ward 7 for the last 4 years, it's been my honor, my pleasure, and my thank to people for allowing me to do that, allowing me to meet and greet people at the doors as well as at the different venues and events. The second thing I'll say is that in Ward 7, it's a city within a city, and being the diversity of all that, it is a challenge to try to represent everybody, but my focus has always been listen and learn before you lead. Secondly, do the right things, do the right way, deliver value, but most importantly, couched on conveying public confidence and trust that, again, all Calgarians across the city and in Ward 7 have to be served equally and equitably, and that's what we've been trying to do. There's a large age generational strata within Ward 7 as well. And I can't say that pleasing one strata pleases everybody else. But what I'm asking for all Calgarians to do is recognize that we're all part of the large community.
From Anthony Askew.
I believe in term limits. I don't like career politicians. I would like to do 2 terms. If I'm worthy enough to get a second term, I'd like to do 2 and then quit and hopefully never see anybody again. I want to give back to the community by, supporting local businesses, supporting the idea of buying local and promoting that within the city. I want to do responsible spending. I want to make sure that we're spending our money on things that are important, like infrastructure, because city council, if you look at it for what it is, it's a boring, mundane job that deals with boring, mundane issues that are vital to the daily operations of our city. Making sure our roads are fixed and repaired, making sure our water mains are being checked and are working, making sure that our waste management is handled effectively. These are all things that are not sexy. They're just boring things, but they need to be done. They need to be done correctly and responsibly, and we need the city council to focus on doing those things and making sure that we're doing all the right things for the people of our ward and our city.
From Mike Atkinson.
Hey there, friends. Mike Atkinson here, and I'm running to be your local, independent, progressive voice here in Ward 7. I've lived in Ward 7 for over 20 years. This includes renting, purchasing my first house that I'm still living in today, 15 years later in Banff Trail. I've raised my kids here. I went to school and got a business degree here at the University of Calgary. I've worked here at CJSW for over a decade, and then down at the Central Library downtown in the service design and innovation team over there. My life revolves around this place, Ward 7, and it really revolves around Calgary as a whole. I was born here. I will die here. This is my forever city. I found this city when I was younger, and the people and the connections and just an amazing place. Obviously, sometimes in this city, we can have a hard time where we feel dissonance and maybe not as connected to this place and space. But once you find those people and that community, it is something so special. And that is what I am trying to build and support here in this city.
That wraps up our conversations with your ward candidates. We hope their insights help you feel more informed heading into the 2025 general election. Now, we're shifting our focus to another important group of elected officials, school board trustees. Trustees play a critical role in shaping the direction of public education. They're responsible for setting priorities, approving budgets, and making decisions that impact students, families, and communities across their school jurisdictions. While their work often happens behind the scenes, it has a direct effect on the quality of education in Calgary. Just like councillors, trustees are elected during the municipal election. To find out which board you vote for, whether it's the Calgary Board of Education, Calgary Catholic School District, or another publicly funded board, you can visit electionscalgary.ca and use the Where Do I Vote tool. We reached out to all nominated trustee candidates running in this ward, inviting them to participate in this podcast. The interviews you're about to hear include only those candidates who responded and were available within our production timeline. To keep things fair and concise, we've selected about 1 minute from each candidate's response. The audio is presented unedited, and we've done our best to ensure every participant's voice is clearly and accurately represented. Let's now hear from the trustee candidates running in this ward. What are your top 3 priorities for Calgary schools, and how do you plan to address them during your term? Running as a public school board trustee candidate, Patricia Bulger.
Well, if I'm re-elected, my priorities are to continue to advocate for new learning spaces. So we were successful in our last term of advocating for more than 15 new schools and an addition of modulars. But with a growing student population, we really need additional learning spaces in our growing city.
Running in Calgary's Catholic School District for Wards 4 and 7, Dan Penna.
First priority is authentic faith formation. That means instead of all too often in classes, in schools, faith is the last priority. It's nominally the first, but it's the last. So I want to hire teachers who are dedicated to teaching the faith, who know the faith, who practice the faith, who love Christ. So that's number 1. Number 2 is parental rights. That means that when a parent sends their child to a Catholic school, they need to get the Catholic truth, nothing else. And that's respecting parental rights. And the third thing is we need what everybody needs. We need the right kind of leadership, and that starts with being honest and open.
How will you ensure equitable access to quality education for students across all communities, including those from marginalized or underserved backgrounds? From Patricia Bulger.
Well, great question. Well, the CBE is the largest school board in Western Canada and expecting over 146,000 students this coming September. So we welcome each and every student into our school. And equity is a focus within the CBE, so no student is left behind, really, with regards to being able to pay school fees or field trips. Everything will be taken care of to ensure all kids have access.
From Dan Penna.
So we've always been completely inclusive. We've always wanted to invite everyone to join our church. And our schools have always been open to everyone. Now, having said that, I don't want to dodge any questions or any thoughts about it. That doesn't mean we're open to all ideas. We're there to teach our faith. We're open to students asking us questions, giving us their opinions, but we can't really change the words of Christ. We look to Christ and the church and the saints for models of how to behave. They loved and served everyone. Sometimes they would go to a leprosy colony and they would die of leprosy. Mother Teresa, people know her. She didn't demand that people change their religious obligations. She was there to love and to serve them. And her witness to Christ was love and service. So we're open. We want everyone to come, but we're going to teach what we think is best for humanity, which is what Jesus taught us.
How will you engage with parents, teachers, and students, and the broader community to ensure transparency and responsiveness in decision-making? From Patricia Bulger.
Well, I think as a trustee, you want to be accessible and available. So those are 2 key things, which I think you just make yourself available to parents and to citizens and stakeholders within the community. I think attending school council meetings is a great way to get a gauge and really get to interact with parents and administration and get a good feel for the school and what needs are there and what concerns might be popping up.
From Dan Penna.
The first thing we always look to when we're making decisions is Christ. And the second thing we look to is his church, because the church is the expression of his desire for us. So we're always going back to our faith. But we also want to engage people in their schools. So what I mentioned before is we need to broadcast our meetings. We need to move our meetings from the afternoon when working people can't go to the evening so that people can come. We need to invite more people to know what we're doing, and that's on us. We need to make sure our links and our information is in every church bulletin or every church website. We need to actually go to parent councils. We need to make that's our job to create those bridges because they haven't been there. So we need to take the initiative. People don't know what they don't know. And so that's on us, and that's what we can do.
What is your position on the role of schools in addressing issues such as mental health, inclusion, and anti-racism? How would you support initiatives in these areas? From Patricia Bulger.
Well, these are clearly, it's a very important area. So as trustees, we do govern through policy. So first of all, we make sure those policies are in place, which they are. And then the other key component is our annual education plan, which absolutely addresses well-being. And one of the other focus areas is truth and reconciliation, diversity and inclusion. So that really drives our budget and drives our school system. So those are critical elements to ensure that those topics are addressed.
From Dan Penna.
If we have a crisis in a school and we call in the mental health professionals, to me that doesn't make sense. We should be calling in the priests and the nuns and the religious and the parents, because we know that our faith works. Like when we call on the Holy Spirit, when we call on Jesus, they're there to help us. And we need to model that for people and not look to a mental health profession that by and large is becoming more and more biologically deterministic. So they're telling kids that, it's your brains, but it's our souls and our wills and our mind that also can guide us. So I'm not a big fan of increasing the presence of mental health in the schools. I'm a big fan of increasing the presence of clergy and religious and Jesus in the schools. We need more faith, and then we'll need less mental health we'll have less mental health problems, and we'll need less mental health supports.
With ongoing concerns about education funding and class sizes in Alberta, how will you advocate for the resources schools need while working within budget constraints? From Patricia Bulger.
Great question. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, Alberta education is the lowest per student funding in the country, which is concerning. And with the impacts of inflation, it has had an impact with regards to the amount of staff you can hire and the supports you can provide for students. So I think we do need to continue to advocate in this area. We've had some progress over the past couple of years with adjustments to the funding formula and some other formulas, but ultimately the base does need to be bigger to support inflation, growing enrollment, increased student complexity, and newcomers to Canada who might be learning English as a second language. So establishing great relationships with government and continue to educate and inform them of the needs of the system.
From Dan Penna.
The Calgary Catholic School Board has been underfunded compared to other school boards in the province. And for example, the Edmonton School Board gets more money per student than we do. That's a long-standing issue, and it speaks to a long-standing problem, which is the Board of Trustees needs to be a strong advocate. It needs to create proper relationships with other levels of government. The municipal government funds us. So we need to work with them, and they need to be clear about what our needs are, and they also need to know that we spend the money well. We also need to find ways for the community to support us. And the community will support us more with their time and their money and their donations if we clearly express to them the needs that we have. And we're not doing a good job of doing that. We're also content to have portables. And we need to make more of an effort to actually build the buildings to last. In the long run, you save money doing that. So there's all manner of ways in which we can do that, in which we can save money, spend it well, and that will encourage the provincial government to fund us better, because better funding is a good thing.
Is there anything else you want people to know? From Patricia Bulger.
I would like to say that serving for the past 4 terms has been invaluable. It is a steep learning curve and have learned a tremendous amount about the system, operating with government, and I think we have formed a strong relationship with the ministry, which is critical moving forward. This government does move quite quickly, and so it's very helpful if we are well prepared to support our students and government in supporting Calgary Board of Education students. And then lastly, I would say that regardless of what choices you do make for your own family and your own children, that we know that public education serves the common good and benefits the community and the city and makes us stronger and more resilient.
From Dan Penna.
Trustees need to see themselves as humble servants of the community, and that means that we need to be witnesses to Christ. So serving as a trustee member gives us a responsibility to deepen our faith so that we're not complete hypocrites when we talk about Christ and relationship to Him, because it's only through our being honest and humble that we can be public Christians, and we need to do that. That's our number one job. Okay, I'm a teacher and I don't know much about Catholic faith. What can we do? We can give you a unit of study in every subject that we develop, and that it's a model unit of study, and it uses Catholic resources, Catholic books, Catholic history.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of CJSW's Municipal Election Coverage. I hope today's conversation brought you a little closer to your community and the people who want to lead it. I'm your host, Emma, and all of the source material for this episode can be found in the episode description. Remember to visit electionscalgary.ca for more information on every candidate and to check your voter registration. Again, we would like to remind listeners that the views expressed in this podcast are those of the candidates and the interview subjects, and not those of CJSW or its staff. Make sure to visit cjsw.com or the CJSW app to check out our voter education episode and our exclusive mayoral debate. Until then, take care, and please vote, follow, and share.